The Contemporary Policy Institute Word of the Week with our founder and president, Andy Thorburn.
Secular. Well, it's an easy word to define. The dictionary just says that it's attitudes or activities that have no religious or spiritual basis. So it's really the opposite of using the word religious. And we know that when we look about moral codes, how should we act? There are both religious codes, codes that are based on religious thought, and there's also secular codes. Very often these codes of behavior overlap. A good example is taking another human's life. A lot of religions say that we should not take another human life except under very specific circumstances, self-defense, for example. And most moral and ethical codes that are based on secular lines of thought come to the same conclusion, that you should not take a human life except under very carefully prescribed conditions. Now, there's a growing debate in the United States right now about whether the United States is a religious-based society or a secular-based society, particularly in terms of the founders and the government that they left us. And this debate has been renewed with growing intensity in recent times. Is the United States, the rights in the Constitution, do they come to us from God, from the Creator, or do they come to us really through a secular process from the Constitution? So let's take a look at the founding documents and see what they say about it. And let's begin with the Declaration of Independence itself. In 1776, as we learn in school, while the colonies were part of the British Empire, delegates assembled in Philadelphia and declared their independence from Britain. And it's interesting to look at the language that they used in that declaration. There's quite a bit of religious language in this document. At the very beginning, they call on the laws of nature and nature's God. A little bit later, they say all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Obviously, another reference to the Creator. And towards the end of the Declaration, once again, the delegates called on a sacred or religious idea. But they said they were appealing to the supreme judge of the world to judge this declaration. And they ended by saying that they're doing this with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. Now, that's religious imagery and religious language, of course. There is some disagreement and some controversy with historians as to what type of religion they're referring to. Is it just a form of deism, kind of abstract religion, or is it really a way of bringing some Christian ideas into the Declaration? But that's not a subject for today. We just want to note that the Declaration does include explicitly religious and sacred language. 12 years later, delegates assembled after having won their independence and having operated for a few years under Articles of Confederation. They determined that they needed a stronger document. They needed another blueprint for a government. They needed a stronger, more precise document that would allow these newly formed colonies, these new states, to form a more perfect union. And so they now developed the Constitution. And I think we want to contrast the language of the Declaration. And remember that the Declaration was written under extreme duress. They needed a document full of passion. They needed to inspire people, and that was the purpose of the Declaration. But now they wanted to write a recipe, a template. This is how the government should operate. So let's take a look at the preamble to the Constitution. I'm going to read it to you in full. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, it would have been very easy, as they did in the preamble to the Declaration, to say under God's guidance, or following divine guidance, or calling on nature's law, or using the Creator. None of that language appears in the preamble to the Constitution. And when we turn to the text of the Constitution itself, we find that the idea of religion is nearly absent. In fact, the word religion only appears twice in the Constitution itself. In both cases, it's a kind of prohibitory comment. For example, in Article 6, the Constitution says that no religious test shall be required as a qualification for any office of public trust under the United States. And this is one of the few places in the Constitution where it doesn't deal only with the federal government. It says any office of public trust in the United States at any level of government there shall be no religious test. So religion is mentioned, but in the sense of prohibiting the practice of religion. And as we all, I think, know, because it's constantly quoted, we have the First Amendment to the Constitution, which was added after ratification, in which, once again, the word religion appears. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Those are the only places in this entire document. There's 7,600 words in this document. Those are the only two words, only two occasions in which the word religion is used. And there are many places in this document, including the preamble, where it would have been natural to add something about divine providence. Even, for example, when they have the oath of office that the president has to give in order to take office, there's no reference to divine guidance. It's just that he will exercise to the best of his ability. He will abide by the Constitution. And so what we have here is an interesting contrast. An inspiring document that does use religious imagery, and a blueprint for a government that is totally devoid of religion and makes it clear that religion has no role to play, no religious tests, and no establishment of religion. And remember that the delegates to this Constitution came often from states that had an established religion. The delegates from Connecticut were very concerned that the federal government might establish some type of religious practice which would make it impossible for Connecticut to continue to support their state-sponsored religion. The result of all these discussions was a decision that said, we're going to build a country in which people can be as religious as they want to be and follow whatever religious path they want to, but the government will be secular. The government will be totally neutral with regard to religion. It would be very difficult to write 7,600 words outlining a government that would be more devoid of religious thought than our Constitution. And so what they gave us was an opportunity for a religious population governed by a secular government.